The Assembly will now hear an address by His Excellency Terrance Michael Drew, Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance, National Security and Immigration, Health and Social Security of St. Kitts and Nevis. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. I have great pleasure in welcoming His Excellency Terrance Michael Drew, Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, National Security and Immigration, Health and Social Security of St. Kitts and Nevis. I invite him to address the Assembly.
Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished delegates. It is my honor in this, my second year as the Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, to join with members of the global family of nations and speak on behalf of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis at home and in their diaspora. I must first extend, however, condolences to people across the world who, in a summer of scorching heat, the hottest in recorded human history, suffered every disaster known to humanity: fires, floods, droughts, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, and with them untold personal, social, and economic tragedies. I especially extend the heartfelt pain of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis at the recent disasters in Libya and Morocco. We in St. Kitts and Nevis are suffering the worst drought of our history, resulting in severe water shortage. Of course, we have not escaped. Mr. President, I extend sincere congratulations to you on your elections as President of this 78th session of the General Assembly. Your election has given pride and satisfaction to St. Kitts and Nevis, and indeed the Caribbean community, and it stands as further testimony to the fact that small island developing states can contribute to positions of global leadership. Your term comes at a time of international complexity and conflict, of great global tensions and even greater global aspirations, of new geopolitical dynamics and even newer technologies which are transforming every aspect of life as we know it. These are times of great divide in income and well-being, combined with such growing insularity and loss of trust that it shouts the need for what Secretary General Guterres has rightly identified as the centrality of prevention, coordination, and partnership. St. Kitts and Nevis shares the view that this must be a period of prevention of the greatest downslide, socially, economically, environmentally, and of security for the people of the world. Mr. President, there exists an alarming lack of trust the world over. Lack of trust in state and global organizations, lack of trust in traditional media, and what some regard as its management and manipulation of information, and Mr. President, a lack of trust in the political class. In a world of distrust, the United Nations and its member states must show a sense of caring, inclusion, respect for the dignity of all to ensure we, the peoples, is a statement of unity and a clarion call for the word common to be truly reflected in how we view global commons and how we together achieve the agenda of the common good. If we are to rebuild trust and reignite global solidarity, leaders, particularly those in wealthier countries, must mean what they say and say what they mean. Developing countries are groaning under the weight of burgeoning challenges, not of their own making, and I would dare say some of which were inherited as a result of colonialization and transatlantic slave trade. Millions of Africans were uprooted from their homelands and transported across the Atlantic in the hulls of ships to be enslaved on plantations. This was the largest forced migration in human history, and it resulted in great wealth for some at the expense of the lives and the humanization of African peoples. It must be noted that compensation was paid to plantation owners, while the survivors of this crime against humanity were left in suffering and were hindered in their socio-economic development. Thus, it is past time for reparatory justice. I therefore encourage all to work together constructively as partners in the pursuit of and respect for justice. For as Martin Luther King said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. The climate challenge must continue to be highlighted. The industrial behemoth countries and companies push SIDS and others to the front lines of climate change. They accept little responsibility for financing the adaptation and mitigation measures necessary for the survival of developing countries, which suffer the consequences of the lifestyles and industries of others. Consequently, countries like mine, which are unable to access concessionary funding, are forced to fix the climate crisis by obtaining loans at exorbitant rates from the very countries where the problem originated. Our carbon footprint as a country is very small, yet we face the existential threat of climate change. This is unjust. We therefore call for climate justice. Mr. President, Your Excellencies, there is an urgent need for the international community to address the gaps and shortfalls of the current international financial architecture, with a view to strengthening support for SIDS, in particular through a multilateral sovereign debt mechanism, meaningful reform of the governance of the international financial institutions, and enhanced access to financial resources. I congratulate the World Bank on recent steps in the right direction. However, there is still much ground to cover if states like mine are not to fail and our economies and societies are to remain viable. I commend the Bridgetown initiative of my sister, Prime Minister Mia Mottley, as having the potential to effect the kind of changes that are essential to ensure equitable growth and sustainable development. Mr. President, I see as an outcome to addressing the issue of access to capital the development of a relevant and effective MVI, Multidimensional Vulnerability Index. I would like to caution, however, that to be effective, debt must be part of the metrics used for assessment and ranking of countries. Further, the risk and cost of wipeout environmental events, those which in a single event or series of events literally wipe out 5% of GDP or more, as well as the capacity to recover from such events, are all important metrics if the MVI is to work. Mr. President, at the national level, our government has commenced efforts to further ensure the holistic and resilient development of our communities. This undertaking is articulated in our vision to transform our country into a sustainable island state by 2040 and demonstrates the determination with which we take ownership of our own destiny and pursue our sustainable development aspirations. Our vision is buttressed by the 7 pillars: food security, green energy transition, economic diversification, sustainable industries, the orange economy, COVID-19 recovery, and social protection. These overarching areas include environmental sustainability, sustainable lives and livelihoods, health and wellness, and fiscal and debt resilience. To this end, we have made strides towards geothermal energy production and utilized loans from the CDB for this national development project, along with collaboration with groups such as the Atlantic Council and the PAC 30 initiative. Healthcare delivery and management have been strengthened. We have learned the lessons of the pandemic and are now better prepared for the crisis in health, even though the work continues. We are also building more transparent and participatory governance structures, as demonstrated by the passing into law the Integrity in Public Life and Good Governance legislations. We have also developed programs for the most vulnerable and marginalized, specifically women, youth, the elderly, the disabled, and the Rastafari community. We want to ensure that St. Kitts and Nevis leaves no one behind. Mr. President, we aspire to create a society where our people can live in safety and security. However, we are plagued by the scourge that is the proliferation of illicit and untraceable weapons flowing into our region. States that manufacture these weapons must take greater responsibility to combat the illegal flows that can threaten our national and regional security and can have devastating socio-economic consequences. We cannot win this fight against the guns on our own. International cooperation is necessary if we are to ensure the protection of our societies and our people. To this end, we thank the United States for increasing its collaboration with the region, with my own country, to deal with the illicit transshipment of guns and to buttress our overall national security apparatus. We must continue to work together to ensure continued success in this regard. Mr. President, it is of great concern that glaring global inequities persist and are growing wider despite sustained calls for global solidarity, action, and cooperation. For example, Venezuela has been placed in a precarious situation as a result of the application of sanctions, and its people continue to bear the brunt of these unilateral measures. We therefore strongly urge constructive dialogue between the governments of the Republic of Venezuela and the United States to relieve the hardships these impositions have caused the Venezuelan people. Further, it ought to be noted that while others benefit from access to Venezuela's natural resources, its Caribbean neighbors are denied as a result of these sanctions. Mr. President, continuing with inequities and the need for respect for sovereign states, Cuba, which has been a generous global partner, is caught in the clutches of an unjust and continuing economic, commercial, and financial embargo, which has caused suffering on a people who do not deserve it. The people of St. Kitts and Nevis stand in solidarity with the government and people of Cuba and call for the immediate ending of the embargo and the removal of Cuba from the unilateral list of state sponsors of terrorism. Mr. President, speaking to the issue of governments and peoples who are excluded from the full participation within the United Nations and the global multilateral systems, I recall the situation of Taiwan. Taiwan has proven itself to be a reliable development partner, which greatly contributes to collective efforts to address the pressing global issues of today. It is our firm belief that Taiwan should be able to make its contribution to the work and budget of multilateral institutions such as the United Nations and the World Health Assembly in furtherance of the common global goals. And it is a hope that the right of its 23 million people to adequate representation can be realized. Moreover, we urge for peace in that region of the world, as war would result in severe consequences for all of us. Mr. President, closer home, the ongoing dire situation in our sister nation Haiti demands the sustained attention and support of the international community. Haiti, the first Black republic in the Western Hemisphere, continues to grapple with unimaginable scale of human suffering. A political resolution is urgently needed, while also recognizing that appropriate measures must be taken to reverse Haiti's legacy of underdevelopment. We cannot move forward on the acceleration of the Agenda 2030 if we continue to knowingly and deliberately leave some people behind. Mr. President, we are living in a world in flux, where new emerging poles and spheres of influence are challenging the existing so-called rules-based order. New currencies are being internationalized, new trade routes are taking shape, and new security, political and economic blocs are emerging to drive geopolitical advantage. The voice of the Global South is growing bolder, with increasingly louder rumblings among powerful blocs calling for change. The need for an enhanced role and presence of developing countries from the Global South within the UN Security Council could not be more compelling. And we are convinced that in the face of these complex changes, the reform of the Security Council is necessary to better reflect contemporary geopolitical realities and enhance its effectiveness. In conclusion, this reform is critical. Let us consider a reset. On the heels of the 40th anniversary of independence of my country, the 40th anniversary, we declare that there should be a reset. We can consider it here, for it gives us the opportunity to establish an improved path to what we seek to achieve as an assembly. For today, at a time that is as challenging as it is exciting, we stand at the juncture of what is and what could be. We know what is. We understand what could be. Ours is a challenge to ensure peace, prosperity, progress, and sustainability for all. St. Kitts and Nevis accepts the challenge and remains a ready and willing partner in our collective quest for a better world that we all deserve, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, National Security, Immigration, Health and Social Security of St. Kitts and Nevis for the statement just made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency.